So hey guys, I'm back with a new video. In the first video we'll learn that JavaScript is a dynamic interpreted programming language and is also a weakly typed programming language. So what do you mean by dynamic and interpreted? So it means that it is not pre-compiled, instead parse and compile on the fly in the browser. That means the code is evaluated and executed at one time. So dynamic and interpreted. So do make a note of this. It's very important to understand the dynamic and interpreted nature of JavaScript. Means no pre-compilation, instead the code is parsed and compiled on the fly, parsed and compiled on the fly. On the fly means at one time. So inside the browser, that means the code is evaluated and executed at the runtime. Also the code can change at one time. So your code that you write, it can change at runtime. Okay, so code can change at runtime. Very important to understand this. The next point is the type of variable can also be changed. So at runtime, these changes which I'm talking about can be the type of variable. Okay, so you can switch types in JavaScript. Type of variable can be switched very easily in JavaScript. Now these changes are not allowed in any programming language, but JavaScript will provide you the flexibility to developers to dynamically say switch the type of data that you can store within the variable. Switch the type of data that you can store within variables. Okay, so very important to understand this. I'm again stressing on the importance of this line, that you can easily switch the type of data that you can store within the variable. So this is a flexibility that JavaScript is providing you, and we will tap this flexibility in the coming videos. So in a variable, you will also understand what is a variable. For now, you can understand that it's a data container. You might start by storing a text in that, and then suddenly you might store a number. So suppose you declared a variable, and just for now assume that it's a container of values. Okay, so say it is holding a string high. Okay, so what you can do is you can switch the type of data. At one instance of time it is having high, other instance of time it is having a number, say this other instance of time it is having a boolean true. So you are able to switch data from one type to another. So from high to 1, from string to number, from number to boolean. So this is the flexibility JavaScript is giving you. And then you may store a boolean in that very same variable. So in this container you are storing that same value. So you are constantly switching between types. So this is a type switching. So you can understand this to be type switching, which JavaScript allows, but unlike other programming languages which doesn't allow type switching, JavaScript allows type switching. So you can easily switch between types. So moving on, you need to understand that between types under a single variable you are able to switch types. Now what do you mean by this dynamic thing? Okay, this dynamic thing in JavaScript means that it is parsed, interpreted and compiled at one time. So parsed, interpreted and compiled at one time. Okay, So no pre-compilation, as I earlier said. Okay, no pre-compilation. Now it's all about dynamic behavior of JavaScript. Therefore it is able to do certain things like switching the data variables, which other programming languages, as I told you, are not allowed to do so. Now it is unnecessary good to switch the data dynamically or unexpectedly, but you can do that. So it is a feature that JavaScript is providing you. It's up to you how you tap this functionality for your code. Okay, now let us discuss the term weakly typed. Okay, so weakly typed. What do you mean by weakly typed programming language? Okay, by the English definition of this, you can understand that it's the types are weak for a language. Means that when you work with data like text, so you have some text, so you're working with data that is a string. Okay, so you're working with text like data or number data, say like 1, 2, 3, or say any decimal value 72.56. So you do not have to inform JavaScript that you are now going to work with strings, or now you're working with integers, now I will be working with floats for that matter. Instead, data types are assumed or inferred automatically for variables. Okay, so this is what you mean by weakly typed. The data types are assumed or inferred automatically for your variables. Now this is also related to dynamic nature. So this in turn is related to dynamic nature of the language and is clearly bound to it. Okay, so data types can change from one line to another. At one time a variable is holding a string, at other time it may be holding a number, at yet another time it is holding a boolean, and so on. Now in other languages like C, Java, you have to define the type of data a variable will hold beforehand. So if you want to hold a variable in say C or in Java, you want to hold a integer, then you will explicitly specify the data type first, then the variable name, and then will equate it to some value, and that should be an integer because you are defining that variable should be of the integer type. This is not the case with JavaScript. Okay, so you are defining the type of data a variable will hold beforehand in these languages, but unlike JavaScript, this is not the case with JavaScript. You do not have to tell JavaScript that this specific variable should hold a number. You are no one to direct JavaScript language to hold this variable, to hold a number or say text. You just simply, your duty is to simply assign any data to the variable. Okay, and it is JavaScript that constantly switches type of variable when it sees your lines of code. Okay, so variable can hold anything in JavaScript, which is not the case with other programming languages. To sum it up, so that's it. In other languages like C, Java, you also have to tell the language that you are going to store a number in there. Like I told you, int a is assigned a value of 3, and if you store something else, so in case of say C and Java, if I say a variable is integer and then I am storing some bunch of characters, this will give me error. Okay, this will spit out an error. So this is not allowed in other programming languages, whereas in JavaScript it is allowed. As I told you, constant type switching is allowed in JavaScript. JavaScript is forgiving in nature, okay, because of the dynamic nature, and it also does not care about the strong type definitions in advance. Instead, you just store the data in there and go with whatever type of data it holds. So data types can change in JavaScript. The switching of data types is allowed, which is unlike other programming languages. So we will discuss more about the complex terms that we had discussed in the very first video, and we will demystify them in the next video. If you are loving the content, please subscribe to the channel and also share the channel to your friends and colleagues, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks a lot, guys.